Before we can run code and have code fire after an animation completes, we need to set up some of inside of the Animate CSS documentation. We need to set up some JavaScript. You don't even need to know what the JavaScript does, but we at least need to set up some JavaScript so we can then use that JavaScript and use the code itself to then fire when an animation itself is complete. What we're going to do is, first of all, go review the Animate CSS documentation, go in there, look at what the code is, copy and paste that code, and then go into add on code that detects completion. So we're in our project files. This is the project files we've been working with. We have our page loaded. We have a couple different animations. If we go into the JS folder and then the interaction.js, we have these different jQuery events that will fire when the different buttons are clicked. But I'm going to add some JavaScript that even happens before the page loaded. So I'm going to bring that down a couple lines. I'm going to hit save. And then I'm going to come into the Animate CSS documentation. And so to get to the Animate CSS documentation, I'm going to go down to where it says View on GitHub. This is the Animate CSS website. And once we're on the GitHub documentation website, you can see where you can download the files, but if you scroll down, this is all the documentation for Animate CSS. This is where you can see how to attach it to your project. You can also see the different types of animations listed out in one big list here. And I'm going to scroll down until I see this section right here. Right here says you can also detect when an animation completes. What we need to do is we need to take this code and we need to copy that code, not the very last line. This is how I then detect the animation inside of whatever object that's actually being animated, but I just need that first code. Then I'm going to copy that and I'm going to paste it. A couple things that you'll notice in here, and I'll explain a little bit of this. We have an animation ends that will basically just fire. It's listening to when an animation itself is actually done. And then it has an animation here. It has an O animation, MOZ animation, and WebKit animation. So just like we learned about in the past when you're using vendor prefixes, this is also using those vendor prefixes to determine when an animation is actually complete. Now, based off that, you don't need to even memorize what's going on here, but we're basically going to call some event, and what's down here is basically going to call, okay, what code is actually going to run when this is done. I don't need to worry about that part yet. Let's just go ahead and copy this part. Let's go into our code, and let's come up here, and let's just paste our code right there and hit save. That's all we need to do for now. We just need to have that code there so we can then determine when the animation completes. But we have to know which animation we're listening for, and we're going to do that in the next video.